fan can cause markets to roil all over the world. And so I can understand that to an extent, but it goes far greater and deeper than that.
I have another question for you, Mr. Mars. How much do your views correspond with the beliefs of the John Birch Society?
I would say not a whole lot.
Well, because I was recently, as of about 4 years ago, interested in the John Birch Society. Only because I had seen and continue to see what's going on politically and socially in our country.
Right.
Okay, a lot of what you're saying, the John Birch Society prints the membership of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission.
That's true, and they've been doing it for years. The only problem with the John Birch Society is that they became fixated on communism, okay, and they failed to look beyond communism to the wealthy inner circles of the elite that created communism.
Okay, we're going to have to mosey along now for just a few minutes, and when we mosey back, we're going to be asking Jim Mars about the past. This book takes us all the way back through the ancient world to the mysteries of the Knights Templar and into ancient Sumeria, and where is the true origin of our world. This is Whitley Strieber. It's going to be fascinating, and from there it'll be all up, at least for a while, until something else occurs that depresses me, and then we will go back to the downer shows again. Okay, now when we get back, we're going to shift gears with Jim Mars, because this book is not just about modern secret societies. It goes all the way back to ancient Sumeria, prior to Rome and Greece, thousands of years ago, the times of ancient Egypt, and traces rule by secrecy from the very beginning of civilization. And we're going to get into that a little bit because I find it really fascinating, and I hope you do too. Okay, when we come back, it'll be Jim Mars on the origins of secret societies. This is Whitley Strieber. Sort of read around, because the author of this email does not want it made public if he is identifiable. And it's really interesting. Okay, let me try to go do this. At least in some shrines, that is among the Shriners, the Jesters was a small group made up of very powerful people, many of whom had immediate access to the president. This individual goes on that he was asked to join by his father, who was a member. He did not do so, but his father said that they were very powerful and had special secret knowledge that gave them that power. He does not know what the knowledge was. This individual also had occasion to be close to Ronald Reagan at times, and he said, I can say from what I overheard that it was clear that there were people who were powers behind the throne. These were, in some cases, members of this group. Reagan did what he was told. That's all the information in the email, delivered in such a way that the individual cannot personally be identified. There's a little bit more information, but it's not really germane. That's the sense and content. Jim, do you have any reaction to that at all?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about in Rule by Secrecy. I start off identifying the modern secret societies, the people who are involved, what their goals are, and then I begin to probe the question, why do they have this power, and why do they have these secrets, and even more importantly, what are these secrets? Let me quote you from Woodrow Wilson. He says, some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Now, that's not Jim Mars' conspiracy theorist or anybody else. That's Woodrow Wilson. And Benjamin Disraeli, the famous British Prime Minister, said that the people who guide the world's destiny are very different personages from the people that we see in public. It's incredible. That's why I begin to track, and for the caller who never learned the secret, I would encourage him to read my book, Rule by Secrecy, and I think you'll agree with me.
Ideas, Jim.
I think you will begin to get some idea of what those secrets might be.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. You touched on something. Where did Wilson say that?
That was, a book he wrote in 1913 called The New Freedom.
Because that's incredible.
It is.
What must he have known? Was he a member of any of these organizations?
That's not clear, but it's clear that Morgan Money.
Because Colonel House, who was Wilson's closest advisor, was certainly involved in secret societies. I can assure you of that.
Exactly. And the thing is, see, that is another modus operandi of these secret societies. They find front people to front for them. You know, for example, the best one I can think about is Jimmy Carter, the former president.
Right.
I've never met Jimmy Carter, but I have the highest regard for him. Anybody at his age who's still going out there and physically working to build homes for the homeless, can't be an all bad person. And yet it was very clear, it was even discussed in the New York Times, the Washington Post, back in 76 when he was elected, that he had been carefully picked up by the Trilateral Commission in 1972, groomed, and the money was put behind him, and the approvals were put in place, and he was placed in the presidency. And then apparently they weren't too happy with their control over him, and so he quickly was out. And there's a whole weird story there that's not even in Rule by Secrecy, but it has to do with an assassination attempt on Jimmy Carter by Raymond Lee Harvey and Oswaldo Ortiz. And I'm not making this up. This was in Time and Newsweek.
I don't believe it. I have to tell you that. And yet you're telling me it was in Time and Newsweek.
I'm telling you, it was just there. Do you want to hear about that?
Yeah.
All right. This was in, it was Cinco de Mayo, so it was May the 5th, or around that time, of 1979. And everybody was down on Carter because they said he was wishy-washy and he wasn't taking any firm steps, and he wasn't, there was just a lot of controversy. They said he was straddling the fence. He goes to Los Angeles to speak before a Hispanic crowd for Cinco de Mayo.
Ann has a comment. Can't they think up any new names?
I know it. Well,
go ahead.
But wait. Okay, the point there is that they don't want new names. These are not so subtle hints to us that somebody else is in control. And the people who understand and the people who know the secrets, or at least are looking for these secrets, they understand these messages. Everybody else, it goes right over our heads, okay? So, all right, so he's out there, and he had asked for national television time. And he was going to go on television, and the pundits were saying that he was going to announce new sweeping changes in governments, new sweeping changes in policy. He was going to get on a firm foundation because everybody could see that Ronald Reagan was going to be facing him as a Republican opponent, and Reagan was the arch-conservative and had very definite programs and agendas. So Carter had asked for this national TV time, but in the meantime, he goes out to Los Angeles, and there's a little bitty blurb in the paper that said an Anglo man was arrested and had a starter pistol on him and 70 rounds of blank ammunition, and they quoted a Secret Service official as saying this was about as non-serious as it gets, okay? And I saw that, and I kept it in my file. But then about a week later, there was a story that came by that said this fella was being held in lieu of $500,000 bond and charged with attempted assassination of the President of the United States. And his name was Raymond Lee Harvey. Well, that caught my attention. So I kept paying more attention to this story, okay? And Raymond Lee Harvey said that he was just kind of a street person that had been picked up by these three hitmen who had come up out of Mexico, and he was supposed to create a diversion along with another fella, and then these hitmen were going to shoot Jimmy Carter, okay? And he actually led authorities to a hotel room where they found a rifle case and boxes of ammunition, rifle ammunition, okay? He also fingered this other person who they arrested. He was a Hispanic, Oswaldo Ortiz, and he was being held too. And then what the disposition of all that case came to, I don't know, because it was never reported on anymore. But that article, I have a copy of it that came from Newsweek, and it covered almost half a page, and the headline says, "Was there an assassination attempt?" Okay? So Lee Harvey and Oswaldo were the only ones identified in this assassination attempt against Carter. After that, he canceled the plans for the National News Conference. He went into seclusion at Camp David, called in everybody, including Billy Graham, and was reported as saying, "I've lost control of the government." Now, that doesn't tell us that the plot is afoot. I don't know what does.
It tells me one thing. It certainly implies that there is something about this place, this world of ours, that we just don't fully understand. To get Ruled by Secrecy, here's what you do. You click through to you go to Streamer.com, click through to the night show, and you'll find out how to get it there. You'll go straight through to Amazon.com, or it's in every bookstore in the country. There are beautiful displays of it all over the place. This book is close.
It looks like it's strapped in black duct tape.
Right. It looks like it's a orange letters, Ruled by Secrecy, white letters, Jim Mars. The whole book is black, and it looks like it's got duct tape strapped around it. It's a neat cover, and it's close to bestseller list. So go out there, and it's probably worth making a bestseller if we are so inclined. We got a couple of calls here, more than a couple actually. There's a whole bunch of calls, and I'm not going to get to all the calls for Jim, I don't think. But let's go to the first-time caller line, Don in Albany, Oregon. Don, you're on the air.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mars.
Good evening.
I was wondering, I wanted to tell you that I read your book, Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy. Most excellent.
Thank you.
Most excellent, and it made a great deal of sense.
Well, you might find interesting in this book we're talking about tonight, Ruled by Secrecy, there is a little small section devoted to who had the power and who had the incentive to, if not initiate, at least acquiesce in the assassination of President Kennedy.
Well, now, I also wanted to ask you, have you ever seen a movie called The Brotherhood of the Bell? It starred Glenn Ford and Dean Jagger.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. I remember that one from years ago. And it was about a secret society.
Okay, let's stay with the phones for a little while. Let's go to Kathy in Oregon. Kathy, you're on the air with Jim Mars and Whitley Strieber.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
And Whitley.
Hello.
I certainly will be getting that book. Well, we've basically known a lot of this we haven't known factually. What I want to ask you, Jim, is are you planning on investigating the secret government efforts to give this country to Indian tribes? You follow the money by the forestry, by Department of Transportation, by HUD, everywhere. We live here right in the middle of an Indian tribe, and there's a terror tax. I understand now that tribes everywhere are getting 1% of all construction within 60 miles of a reservation and 2% where federal dollars are involved. You check the HUD budget, no matter what. Now, here's my question that I would like you to find out. Is this to divide and destroy us, or is this to set aside some lands that will not be under the New World Order rule? But it's all secret. There is no media that reports on it at all. If they do, all it is hooray for the Indian. Well, they're not Indians. They're white Indians. Out here, they're 15, 16th white. And so I'm just really, really curious. A lot of this is being done through Clinton, through the Executive Department, the Interior, and the BIA and everything. Have you thought about that?
Well, yes, I do, and I do know some about that. I really hesitate to get into all that tonight on this show, but let me just go back and point out that during World War II, they used Indians for coded messages in the armed forces, and since then they have used Indian lands for secret government installations, for testing, for all kinds of things. And yes, I think there is a game plan there. I think there is an agenda being played out, and of course it's beautiful because on the one hand you can say, well, we really need to help the Indians, which I totally agree with, but then it's like saying it's the same thing you see happening with the environmental movement. If you look and you find these huge corporations that are actually the problem of the environmental degradation to begin with, are funding a lot of these environmental movements because it always gives them an emotional issue that they can use to push their own agendas. And that's about all I would really want to say at this point, but I think that you are onto something.
Well, thanks very much, caller. Jim, we have not gotten a chance to talk about the past, the distant past. And
right.
We're just about finished with the program. We're going to have to do this in another program.
Right. Well, let me just quickly point out, though, that not only in Ruled by Secrecy do I detail how these secret societies have been behind every war and revolution of the 20th century, but you can go back into the 19th century. And again, never mind my theories. Let me quote to you from the German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, and he's talking about the American Civil War. And he says, quote, The division of the United States into federations of equal force was decided long before the Civil War by the high financial powers of Europe. These bankers were afraid that the United States, if they remained in one bloc and as one nation, would attain economic and financial independence, which would upset their financial domination over the world. So in other words, he says the Civil War is all a big plot. And when you start looking at the facts, you find that there is significant evidence to support that. Because John Wilkes Booth himself is documented as a member of a secret society, the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Wow, which of course the Ku Klux Klan is related to that.
Right.
All right. It's been great, Jim. This has been a blow, I hope, for freedom. Rule by Secrecy, Jim Marrs. It's an extraordinary book. Get it by clicking through from Streamer.com right now, or go and pick it up at your bookstore tomorrow. When we get back, Michael Hesseman
with Nick Begich. And Mr. Begich is involved in exposing a lot of the technology that has the effect of controlling us. I'll tell you what, let me ask you folks. This just crossed my mind, and of course creative genius happens on the spur of the moment, right? I mean, that's when it occurs. It doesn't happen by sitting down and contemplating your navel. So let me ask you to indicate whether you fear the technology that is evolving today. Because when we get Nick Begich on the air, we're going to talk about a whole variety of things that have to do with mind control, have to do with literally changing our attitudes, our beliefs, our emotions, and affecting us in such a way that we will not be who we were. One of the examples of that he talks about, we'll get into it in detail, I'm not at all technical, but apparently with all of the computerization, there is the ability in a computer now to actually, because of the energy from the computer as you sit in front of the monitor, to create an effect on you, the person operating that computer, so that it gets inside of you, that energy from that computer, certain kind of icon or software or something that has that impact, and that changes us as people. Now, of course, that's the whole notion of Big Brother watching, and the fear that many of us have had for years about 2001, A Space Odyssey, or about 1984, the Orwell writing, the technology being used against us.
Oh, very possibly, and it seems like there's a whole lot of apathetic people out there that are just ignoring their privacy rights left and right, as it's not even a slow infringement on them. It's a rapid infringement on our privacy, especially with the largest lobbying effort in Washington, D.C. to allow banking to go into other areas and share information with insurance companies and allow the conglomerates to merge their databases. The amount of information out there is incredible.
Yeah, but Gary, I'm not talking. We talked the other night about privacy. I'm really talking about actually having mind control and control of human populations.
It can get there. I don't think you would expect it here in the near-term future. But as so many other subjects that that our bill has touched on, I think that your best protection it does come right into the privacy issues. That is your privacy, your mind, your thoughts.
Well, that's true, but you see, it's a lot different. They're both bad, but see, I would separate them this way. Privacy issues, to me, as you described a moment ago, would have to do with the people who shouldn't have your Social Security number getting it, people who shouldn't have your buying habits getting them, people who shouldn't have your name when you purchase a product from one company, having it sold to another company so they can make money and get you on another mailing list. State departments of motor vehicles selling your name off your driver's license register, which has been happening in some states. And it's much worse than that. That's all about privacy, your medical records, and those matters. What I'm talking about here is actual mind control, actually using technology to track where you are, what you're doing, to be able to use technology to literally change your thinking or affect your emotions. I mean, that's really the next level of very scary stuff.
Yeah, and what is California and other states proposing doing but taking DNA sampling of all arrestees, not people that have been convicted. They want to
take DNA samples of people that are arrested for a crime before they're convicted. That DNA information will eventually, as soon as the states are able to do it, it's put on hold temporarily, but don't watch it to go away, to get into what's referred to as a smart card. That's a computer chip that looks like a driver's license, and it can hold an awful lot of information. These DNA databases, once they have your DNA fingerprint, and the way that the biomedical technology is doing DNA engineering, you don't know, once they have that DNA footprint of yours, and with the ability of manipulating DNA and having very, very target-specific viruses, and God knows what some imaginations can come up with, and that's all stored. How best to manipulate you than using your own DNA evidence or your own DNA against you? And if you want to take one step back, you know, where did it start from? But with the drug testing of, you know, for marijuana and other things, and you know, someplace in there's a Fifth Amendment that says that my own body fluids should not be able to incriminate me.
Exactly.
And that's exactly, and people just ignore these little infringements, and they, of course, government and its bureaucracy will keep creeping and creeping. But if I want to control your mind, the best way for me to do it is use the new nanotechnology where they can actually have a gene flex on command. Now, right now, it's only bending in an L shape and bending back straight again. But once that single gene is able to flex, and they have your DNA footprint right sitting on your smart card that you're required to plug in every time you want to buy a beer to make sure that you haven't been convicted of an alcohol-related offense, that's where we're going to get into trouble. And I'm telling you, people, it's a lot closer than what you think. Don't let them keep body samples of fluids.
Well, that's one element. Thank you for calling, Gary, too, but that's one element. And it's a very scary element. He's absolutely right. But there are other levels where there's not just the use of your DNA or your body fluids, but actually changing who you are. Technology, changing who you are. As we talked the other night, in technology, they can literally, even on the in terms of who you are as a person. Remember the film The Net with Sandra Bullock? They could just wipe you off the planet. In terms of off the records that exist, you would no longer exist. Your credit cards could be eliminated, your checking accounts, your finances, the savings that you had. If a government wanted to do that for some reason, it has the power to do it, and that's scary. Marcia in Fort Smith, Arkansas. You're on with Mike Siegel for Art Bell at Coast to Coast AM. Hello.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, I'm not. I'm scared to death of what you're talking about, because it's not going to be only with computers. If you stop and think, there's still a large proportion of the population that has nothing to do with computers right now. My family, for instance. And they have other ways of gaining control. I don't know if you've noticed that there is a proliferation of, quote, telecommunication, unquote, towers, or other types of towers close to our schools, close to our elementary schools. If, when you drive past one, you will just feel your body. Just pay attention to anything that changes. You're going to find that you are affected when you're close to those towers.
Oh, there's no question about that. In fact...
well, it's not just the normal electromagnetic. They have what they call little black boxes that are sending out signals. They can produce headaches or stomach aches, nausea, whatever they want to. And by checking the school records, they can find out which of the students are the most susceptible, which ones can be trained the easiest or controlled the most easily. And this is going on all through the country, all through the population. And
what about
it has been for years.
Well, Marcia, let me give you another one. And this isn't even... it's subliminal persuasion, and part of what you're talking about relates to this. But I'll mention something now that happened a number of years ago, back in the 70s, and it's about subliminal persuasion. There was a campaign run on one of the television networks, I won't name it, but it was intended to do the right thing. What they did was to subliminally show, so that you couldn't consciously see it, but your subconscious would pick it up visually, a skull and crossbones for the week before Labor Day weekend one year. And the reason was simple. They wanted to scare people from getting into automobile accidents. Well, what happened was it wound up being the heaviest year of accidents ever and deaths on the highway on Labor Day weekend. And the reason was that unintentionally they brought out the death wish.
They programmed people to die.
That people subconsciously were driven to, without consciously realizing it, to want to die. And so after that, we've passed laws in this country prohibiting subliminal persuasion for that reason. There was also known being used in movie theaters. I think it was like 1/25th of a frame or something where they would show a little bag of popcorn. You wouldn't consciously see it, but wouldn't you know, they had enormous sales of popcorn.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that was, pretty much benign, although, they're trying to get you to spend your money. But the power of that is overwhelming.
Well, Mike, something else that scares me is the tracking of everyone. Over in Spain, they have developed a device now they're going to place on Alzheimer's patients, and the police are going to be able to tell where they are at any time. There's a woman that works at a manufacturing plant here in Fort Smith. She said they have just been issued new cards they have to use that have a chip in them that a central monitoring station can tell where everyone is at all times, whether they're in the restroom or who's in the restroom, this, that, and the other.
You're absolutely right, and that's what's scary about this. By the way, that's one reason you ought to be here throughout this program. You might get more scared, but you'll become more educated as well, because Nick Begich is going to join us in the next hour, and he's got all kinds of information. Something that we'll go into detail with an expert about in the next hour, Nick Begich, which is technology, mind control, controlling mass populations, tracking you through cell phones, through video monitors and computers, and the enormous technology change having some enormous value, but maybe some very scary potential as well in terms of eliminating what we now know to be individual freedom. Let's go to Dean in Grapevine, Texas. Hello, Dean. You're on with Mike Siegel for Art Bell.
Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
Sure.
One thing that kind of always flash back to, and in fact I just thought about this when you were discussing technology, was Edward R. Murrow did a show called See It Now.
I remember that program.
And one night he told his producer to flip on the Atlantic coast, and he asked his producer to flip on the Pacific coast, and he looked at the audience and he said, this is for the first time we've been able to actually look at two coasts at the same time. But one thing we do need to do is it's all how you go about it, folks. If this is a technology, if we use it wisely, we don't abuse it. And it was, how you say, prophetic words.
Well, let me ask you something. Do you think that the people with the control today have the stature of an Edward R. Murrow?
I think that's the whole thing, is we've lost that foundation of, and the sad thing is we've gotten in, you mentioned little bits and pieces like the skull and crossbones, the different, I guarantee you it's almost ironic, the 70s we had the subliminal, remember the Black Sabbath albums, they took it to court and they were saying that, the back mask, like that, but somewhere ironically somebody might have learned to, slip that into a Pepsi commercial. And the image is a very powerful thing, and in other countries like Japan and things like that, they are very heavily marketed and things like that. Literally the Pokemon, the Barney, the whole situation like that is, they're very finesse in marketing, and the visual image and technology is very much into that. And computers right now, with Bill Gates, literally we're going to have antivirus protection against, what we're very speaking about right now. I mean, literally we're going to have protectors, because with the technology of being able to just get inside computers and use it as, to do different things like this, it can be scary. It can be incredible. We could bring this world together with the internet and technology, and with our human genealogy being mapped and literally being done within the next year. It's all how we go about it.
Well, you're right, and and I thank you for calling. But the real point here is that the technology exists in a vacuum. It's an enormous potential. That technology can be used for magnificent enhancement of the human race and moving us forward, or it can be used for very evil purposes. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I would ever trust government to have that control over us. The whole point of the Founding Fathers creating the Bill of Rights was to protect us, to create a shield from government. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution create a shield from government in different areas of life. And now what we're doing is giving them that power in a technological era. They couldn't get it under the Constitution, and now they're getting it in a very surreptitious way, and I don't feel really good about that. I'm very discomforted by that. Ramona in Westfield, Massachusetts. You're on with Mike Siegel for Art Bell. Hello.
Thank you for taking my call. I've been listening, and what I figured it out, what I'm seeing here is like when they had to set everything with the YK2 in 2000, that this was going to shut down, this was going to,
right.
This wasn't, okay, we have that already, because if you go to the bank and the computers are shut down, you can't get your money out. And there's times when you've gone in there and you're really busy and stuff, and then, oh, we're sorry, the computers are not working, you'll have to come back and stuff like that. Right there. But one thing that I'm learning through my years is we are a number. And our number, like you said, the Social Security, and even your zip code is a link into your personal business and also your telephone number.
There's no question about that.
Yes, it's all in there, because if you call up certain companies, they'll ask you, are you at this such and such number, and is this your, zip code and everything. So your zip code is a link into the computers. But what I want to tell you is we are being set up for a one world government where everything is going to